Hey everybody, I just started recording this podcast and I said footnote again. I just can't, for some reason, I can't get away from saying footnote. This is kind of an oral discussion or a verbal discussion of what I want for next week because on the face of it, it seems like a complicated assignment, although it's really not. The first thing I want to say is that with this assignment, as well as every other assignment that you do for my course this semester, I want a cover sheet with your name on it and your email. Just get in the habit of doing that. Put your name on it and your email. That should be true of any assignment, every assignment that you do this semester that's due in class or even not in class. Every assignment needs your name, needs your email. Now, as you know, this section of the course is getting you familiar with footnotes, footnote style, but we're going beyond style, although I think footnote style is very important. But the use of footnotes, what footnotes are for, transparency, the ability of other historians to go back and double check your work, that what you're quoting, you're actually quoting accurately, that you're not making something up. And as I've said a bunch, but it's worth saying one more time and probably more than one time. You know, we live in an era of a lot of accusations going back and forth, and we live in an era where we do need transparency. When someone is making a historical claim, it's more important than ever that other historians can go back and check their evidence. Now, they might disagree with their interpretation. Just because they check their evidence doesn't mean that they will inevitably agree with someone's interpretation. But at the very least, they can see that the historian, even if they disagree with the historian's interpretation, has quoted their sources correctly, has used them in a manner that fits within historical protocols. And again, I want to get across that even if historians are playing by the rules, they can still come to very, very different conclusions about the reasoning, and the causality of what we that's the word we use, causality, the causes of historical events. So that's what we're going to focus on. That's what you're going to focus on in the assignment for next week. I talked about it on Tuesday. You're reading an argument by James McPherson of Princeton University and Ira Berlin, who I think taught at the University of Maryland, over the causes of emancipation. And they have a pretty stark disagreement about really what is the historical causation of the emancipation of U.S. slaves. Now, I don't believe I need to give you a long lecture on emancipation. I think you understand that the Civil War led to the end of chattel slavery. It didn't lead to the end of oppression of African Americans in all kinds of ways, of course, but it did lead to the end of the legal system of chattel slavery, which was outlawed specifically by the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. So, as I say, as I've said a couple of times, it's as true as 2 plus 2 equal 4 that chattel slavery was outlawed in the United States, although other kinds of oppression faced by African Americans still survived. Okay, so they're arguing about the causality of it. And what I want you to do is first, I want you to look at both of the essays. You can read them in any order you want. And I want you to take apart the essays and the argument in the essay. Now, this part actually has less to do with footnotes, and it has more to do with the fact of historians can come up with different interpretations for the same event. So, what I want you to do in Part A, and I want you to label it Part A, is I want you to literally write down what what's the cause for McPherson, what was the historical cause for emancipation. You can just write it down in a sentence. And then I want you to give 3 to 5 quotes from McPherson in which he supports his argument. So what I'm trying to do here is I want you to go into an essay, a historical essay, And I want you to see how historians make an argument which they then support using historical evidence. Now, part B, you do the same thing for Berlin. Write a brief account of what Berlin argues is the cause for emancipation, 1 or 2 sentences at most. And then I want you to go in and give 3 to 5 quotes from Berlin where he articulates and supports his argument uh, behind what he thinks is the causation for emancipation. Okay, so what you're doing is you're going into both Berlin and McPherson, and you are looking at the argument they're making and then how they support it by using direct quotes from these articles. Okay, on both for both McPherson and both Berlin, I guess I put McPherson first and then Berlin. You may want to do it in that order. Um, I want the quotes that you use when you're examining their language that they use to support their evidence. I want you to quote them directly, their arguments and their evidence. It has to be in a proper citation style. Every time you cite a source, either a primary or secondary directly, it has to have some footnote attached to it. Gosh, dog it. I said footnote again. Okay, you know what? I give up. You're just going to have to roll with me. I mean endnote. I guess McPherson's are footnotes. Anyway, you're just going to have to roll with me. Maybe I'm just too old to change my ways. But in this course, I want endnotes. Okay. So I want you, every time you, let me go back to the main point, besides me getting old and kind of losing my mind a little bit, which maybe really is the main point, but you're not going to be graded on that. So for A and B, I want you to go back. I want you to look at these 2 articles and offer examples specifically from both articles where they support their argument, their different arguments about what was the cause of emancipation. I want you to quote them directly and then cite each quote in an endnote form. Now, on the assignment that I'm about to post, uh, I'm pointing you towards the Little Seagull citation book, which I can't remember the page now because I can't get up my Word document, but I'm sending you to a specific page which tells you how to cite an article that it appears within a book of collected essays. Both of these articles that you're looking at appeared in books that had a collection of essays. So I'm sending you to the exact page, the exact number, and the Little Seagull citation form on how you correctly cite an article, essay, same thing, that appears in a book of articles or essays. And you're doing the note form, you're not doing the bibliography form. The note form comes first. You'll see when you look at it. I want this to be correct. I want the quotations to be correct. You need to italicize the name of the book. You might note that you don't italicize an article, you put quotes around it, but you do italicize the name of the book. Remember, every citation is a sentence, so it has to end in a period. Do it exactly the way they do it in the Little Seagull. And then they don't do it in the Little Seagull, but always remember for the second citation, if you're so let's say you cite McPherson once, the second time you cite him, you don't have to use the full citation. You can abbreviate it. But again, you need to put the page number, and remember, it's a period. Every citation is a sentence, rather, and it needs to end with a period.